Most people walk into Antiques Roadshow hoping for a few $100. But these gemstone owners, they walked out as newly minted high rollers. Welcome to our channel! Today, we've rounded up the absolute best underrated gemstone discoveries in Roadshow history. Could you be holding onto a fortune without knowing it? Happy, let's find out. Before we reveal these jaw-dropping gems, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more amazing antique stories.
It would bring about $5,000 to $6,000.
Holy smokes, that's a lot more than I thought.
Opal is one of the most beautiful gemstones in the jewelry world. It's also one of the most fragile. Over time, opals can dry out, crack, and lose much of their value. So when a nearly 100-year-old opal jewelry set appeared on Antique Roadshow, the first question wasn't how much it was worth. It was whether it had survived the decades intact.
You know, a lot of people consider these sort of things aren't very lucky. Why do people not think that they're very lucky? Well, because they've got this habit of drying out and cracking. They fall apart. If they've got cracks in them, unfortunately, it brings the value right down.
Right.
These, though, I'm pleased to say, are in extremely good condition. And that was the first piece of good news. The opals in this collection had remained in remarkably fine condition. There were none of the tiny fractures that often appear in stones of this age. Flashes of green, red, and blue still shimmered beneath the surface. The owner received this set from her grandmother when she was around 15 years old. In fact, the jewelry was special enough that it convinced her to get her ears pierced so she could wear the matching earrings.
No, they were given to me by my grandmother when I was about 15, and she said, oh, I could have these if I had my ears pierced. I didn't have ears pierced at the time. So ever since then, I've worn pierced earrings.
According to the appraiser, the necklace dates to around 1925. But the piece that caught his attention most was the pendant. Its opal was completely different from the others. It displayed far more fire, more color, and immediately stood out from the rest of the set.
You've also got an opal pendant, and I'm interested in this one because, as you can see, it's an utterly different stone.
Much more fire in that one.
Much more fire, much more of this so-called pin fire, where you've got all sorts of flecks.
Then came the valuation, and the numbers immediately caught everyone's attention.
So down to values, well, I would think for insurance around about £7,500. You've got the opal beads for the ears too.
Right.
These, for insurance purposes, probably about £500, £600, and that pendant probably at auction around £800 to £1,000, and insure that one for £2,500.
The necklace alone carried an insurance value of around £7,500. The earrings and pendant added even more value. But the most memorable part of this case wasn't the money. It was the fact that a gemstone, famous for its fragility, had survived nearly a century while still preserving its beauty.
I inherited them from my great aunt Georgie. I figured that they were Victorian era and possibly only worn for dressy occasions. I wanted information because I don't know what the stones are, and I made an assumption that the filigree is gold, but I didn't know that either.
For the owner, these earrings were a family piece that had been passed down, but many details about them remained a mystery. She believed they were from the Victorian era, but did not know exactly what the stones were, what material was used, or the true story behind them. In antique jewelry, just a few clues from the materials and craftsmanship can completely change the understanding of an item's age.
They're 15-karat gold, which tells us that they're probably English, not American, and the gold around it is chased. It's called chasing, so that's where you get all those little crevices.
The 15-karat gold detail suggested that the earrings were most likely English. The decoration was also created using a technique called chasing, a handcrafting method used to create patterns and depth on the metal surface. It was a sign of carefully made jewelry from a time before mass production. But the central stone became the key detail that helped the expert identify the true period of the piece.
The stone is really interesting. It's called Chalcedony, and it's a form of agate, and it's a stone that was used during this period, but it's not Victorian, which would put it 1820 to 1840.
The stone was identified as Chalcedony, a material appreciated in early 19th century jewelry for its soft and elegant appearance. This revealed that the earrings were not Victorian as the family believed, but actually belonged to the late Georgian period, making them even older than expected. Beyond their age, the unusual design also made the earrings much more interesting.
The value as is $1,500. Oh. And I would repair them. And I think once repaired, you're looking at something that's probably going to be $3,000.
From a family pair of earrings with an unknown background, the piece was identified as Georgian English jewelry made with 1/5 karat gold, Chalcedony, and traditional craftsmanship. More than just a collectible item, it preserves an intelligent design that has survived for almost 200 years.
Well, I bought it in a local charity shop, and it was with the costume jewellery.
How much did it cost?
It cost me £1.
£1?
£1, yeah.
Right.
When the owner bought this ring, she simply thought it was an ordinary accessory. It was not found in a luxury jewelry store, but among pieces of costume jewelry items usually purchased for their appearance rather than the value of their materials. But sometimes in the world of antiques, the objects that are easiest to overlook can hide the most important details. And with this £1 ring, the first clue did not come from the stone in the center.
No.
So I just thought it was a nice ring with pretty glass inside.
I looked at it and I thought, that's interesting because of this rather unusual fluted back. Now, can you see the way that's got that kind of sunburst effect?
When appraising antique jewelry, the back of a piece can sometimes reveal more than what is seen on the front. The craftsmanship, stone setting, and small handmade details can help identify the period and origin of a piece. And this unusual design pointed to a much older chapter in the ring's history.
Yes.
That kind of design is typical of jewellery that was made in Georgian times.
Okay.
So we can date it to around about 1790,
Okay.
1800, that sort of period.
Okay.
From something that appeared to be simple costume jewelry, the ring was suddenly identified as a piece more than 2 centuries old. But what made it even more special was the combination of antique craftsmanship and Mughal influence, a jewelry tradition known for using high-purity gold and natural gemstones. And the biggest secret was still hidden in the stones the owner had underestimated.
And it's really quite an extraordinary thing. Your £1 investment, you see, is worth £2,000.
Wow.
In antique jewelry, a gemstone does not always have the perfect appearance of a modern diamond. The cutting style, age, and craftsmanship can be just as important as the stone's brilliance. In the end, what was thought to be glass turned out to be a real diamond, combined with rubies and 2/2-carat gold. From a £1 charity shop ring, this small piece became a centuries-old discovery that most people had completely overlooked.
As you can see, they're all little signal flags set with different coloured gemstones, rubies, diamonds and sapphires. And there are 1 or 2 other rubies there. And these are probably tourmalines and citrines. Very prettily made. And each of these is a letter, a signal flag letter. And they're engraved on the back. And it spells remembrance, doesn't it?
Yes.
From the very first look, the expert realized this brooch was not just a colorful design. Each small flag represented a symbol from the maritime signal system and was recreated using different gemstones, including rubies, sapphires, diamonds, tourmalines, and citrines. What made it special was that behind this beautiful appearance, there could be a personal message hidden within the design.
These were terribly popular around 1900 and were often made by a firm called Benzie and Cowes. So this probably was a present from a rather wealthy yacht owner to his wife or ladylove.
According to the expert, pieces like this were especially popular around 1900 during a period when yacht culture was thriving. This brooch may have once been a gift from a wealthy yacht owner to someone special. Instead of a simple message, these tiny flags could preserve a private meaning through carefully arranged gemstones.
You'll probably be surprised to know for about £2,500.
What's that?
Yes, yeah.
The insurance value of around £2,000 to £2,500 reflected the appeal of a piece of jewelry that combined beauty with a fascinating story. It may not be the most expensive item in the countdown, but it stands out because of the creativity behind its design. A communication system, once used at sea, was transformed into a personal piece of jewelry where every color and symbol could carry its own meaning. Some treasures remain forgotten for so long that even the family no longer remembers they exist. This case began after the owner's mother-in-law passed away. Years later, the family discovered a collection of emerald and diamond jewelry still sitting in a bank vault. And when the appraiser began examining the pieces, he chose to tell their story in reverse, starting with the newest piece and working backward through time.
They were my mother-in-law's, and they were in the bank. And it wasn't until after her death, 12 years ago, that we discovered this jewellery in the bank. So
I'm going to start from the most recently made piece, and then I'm going to go backwards.
The first piece was an Art Deco brooch dating to around 1930. Its geometric design immediately revealed the period. But what truly caught the appraiser's attention was the emerald at its center, a rich blue-green color that collectors actively seek today.
I'm going to start with this one here. Emerald and diamond brooch, that very geometric, rectangular look would date that to Art Deco. But the emerald in the middle of this piece is a lovely, dark, blue-green color, and it's just the kind of color that the market most looks for.
Then the story moved further back in time. There were Victorian emerald and diamond earrings, and then a necklace that impressed the appraiser even more. Its intricate gold filigree work and remarkably consistent emeralds immediately stood out. According to the appraiser, it predated the Victorian era altogether.
Now we move on. Look at that.
they are superb,
Oh,
aren't they? They're
wonderful.
stunning.
Emeralds in canatile gold settings. The actual necklace itself, we can date to round about the reign of William IV, that sort of period.
Really?
So it's that early.
Then came the valuations, and the figures were higher than anyone expected.
The Art Deco brooch is wearable, top quality, platinum mounted. At auction, it would probably go up to round about £2,500 to £3,000. The earrings, emeralds and diamonds again, I'm noting the old cut of the diamonds, but they are exquisitely commercial. One would be expecting them to make maybe £4,000 or £5,000. Moving on to the necklace, I think that if it was offered at auction, it would probably make about £8,000.
Really?
Yeah. So add those together, something approaching £15,000 to £20,000.
The collection carried a combined value approaching £15,000 to £20,000. But the most fascinating part of this case wasn't the money. It was how a handful of jewelry pieces could trace an entire history of design. From the reign of William IV through the Victorian era and into Art Deco. A collection forgotten in a bank for years, only to reveal more than a century of jewelry history when it was finally brought back into the light. Some pieces of jewelry stand out because of their rarity. Others are remembered because of their value. But every once in a while, an item appears on Antiques Roadshow that stays with people because of the story behind it. And this is one of those cases. At first glance, this is a beautiful Art Deco pendant watch featuring platinum, diamonds, and elegant enamel details. It's the kind of piece collectors immediately notice, but within a few minutes the appraisal shifted from a discussion about jewelry to something much more personal.
I brought today a pendant watch that my father gave my mother after they were divorced.
It was a gift from the owner's father to her mother after their marriage had already ended. On the surface, that might not sound extraordinary. But according to the owner, there was a time when her parents could barely speak to one another. Years passed, life moved on. Gradually, things began to change. They started meeting for coffee, they traveled together, they spent time together again, and eventually became genuine friends.
Your dad's my best friend. Well, he gave it to her kind of as a way to say he was sorry.
That's probably a sentence the owner never expected to hear from her mother. And it's also the reason this pendant watch carried far more meaning than its material value alone.
When I look at this, I think it's all about forgiveness.
But even if you focus only on the object itself, it's still an impressive discovery. The watch was created during the Art Deco period, featuring a diamond set chain, small sapphire accents, and a platinum case. Every detail reflects the elegance and craftsmanship associated with the era. Then the expert opened the watch and found a name that immediately caught the attention of serious collectors.
This one is BLANCPAIN, BLANCPAIN is a Swiss watchmaking company, founded in 1735. BLANCPAIN is the oldest watchmaker in recorded history.
BLANCPAIN is one of the oldest watchmakers in the world. Combined with its original 1920s Art Deco design, the pendant watch instantly became a highly desirable piece from a collector's perspective.
This dates from 1920 to 1925. It really is true Art Deco.
Every element pointed to a period when craftsmanship was still at the heart of luxury objects. And then the appraisal reached the moment everyone had been waiting for.
Retail on this, it would bring about $5,000 to $6,000.
Holy smokes.
$5,000 to $6,000 for a family pendant watch. But the most memorable part of this story probably isn't the valuation. It's the fact that a small piece of jewelry became a symbol of reconciliation, friendship, and a second chance after years of separation. And in many ways, that's what makes this piece truly priceless. Some necklaces on this list stand out because of their value, some because of their history, and some are remembered simply because the story behind them is too good to ignore. This next case definitely falls into that category. It all began with a dinner party that the owner probably never forgot.
It was a peace offering from my husband after a very disastrous dinner party.
According to the owner, a guest invited by her husband refused to eat nearly everything that had been prepared for the evening. The atmosphere became so uncomfortable that she eventually had to order food from a local pub just to rescue the situation. In other words, it was not a successful dinner party. And her husband seemed to understand that very well, because not long afterward he arrived with a gift. An opal necklace.
No, I shouldn't think it was over the top because I don't think it was that big an apology.
Oh, really?
In the owner's opinion, it wasn't an especially extravagant apology. The expert, however, appeared to disagree. The moment he picked up the necklace, he was immediately impressed.
Well, I think it was a pretty handsome apology, actually.
This was a beautiful opal necklace created during the period when Australian opal mines were transforming the global gemstone market. And that's one of the reasons opals became such beloved stones among collectors and jewelry enthusiasts.
Before about 1850, opals came from Czechoslovakia, and they were horrible, dull little things. And in 1850, they started opening up the opal mines in Australia.
The flashes of red, blue, yellow, and orange that shift under changing light give opals a look unlike almost any other gemstone. It's the kind of beauty that needs very little explanation. One glance is often enough to understand why people have been fascinated by opals for generations.
It's a very, very pretty thing. It's, as you know, opals, beautiful opals.
And then, the appraisal reached its most important moment. The point where this peace offering suddenly became a much more expensive apology.
For insurance purposes, I would value this necklace at somewhere between £5,000 and £6,000 today.
What? I'm going to have to apologise to him.
£5,000 to £6,000 for an apology. Not exactly cheap, but probably quite effective. And what makes the story even better is that this was only one of several opal pieces featured in the collection that day, proving that sometimes a thoughtfully chosen gift can turn out to be a genuine hidden treasure. If the previous case took us into the world of grand estates and British aristocracy, then this next story transports us straight into Hollywood's golden age. A world where jewelry wasn't simply worn on red carpets. It appeared on movie screens and became part of cinematic history. From the beginning, the owner knew these pieces had a connection to Hollywood. What nobody realized was just how important that connection would turn out to be.
Tell me about this.
Well, this one was worn by Scarlett O'Hara.
Scarlett O'Hara. That name alone is enough to capture the attention of movie lovers around the world. She is the iconic character from Gone with the Wind, one of the most celebrated films ever made. And that means this necklace was once worn by one of the most famous characters in motion picture history.
Vivien Leigh in Gone with the Wind.
Vivien Leigh, a true Hollywood legend. But the story doesn't stop there, because this collection is also connected to one of the most important names in Hollywood jewelry history, Joseph of Hollywood.
Joseph was born 1905 in Chicago, and he met a fellow named Walter Plunkett. And Plunkett...
For decades, Joseph of Hollywood was responsible for creating jewelry seen in countless classic films. Their designs appeared on some of the biggest stars and in productions from the largest studios in the industry. So this isn't simply costume jewelry, it's a piece of movie history. Hollywood provenance, a legendary actress, a legendary character, a legendary film, all coming together in a single collection. And then the appraisal reached its most important moment.
I'd say at a good, well-advertised auction, it would probably go $100,000 to $150,000.
$100,000 to $150,000 for costume jewelry created for the silver screen. It was the kind of valuation that reminds everyone that history, popular culture, and Hollywood nostalgia can sometimes create value every bit as powerful as diamonds and precious gems. But even a six-figure valuation wasn't enough to claim the top spot in today's bonus countdown. Because the final item isn't just another necklace. It's one of the most astonishing discoveries ever featured on Antiques Roadshow. This next case begins with a ring that the family believed they had understood for decades. It had been carefully kept, worn on special occasions, and carried a deeply personal story. But there was one small detail that could change everything. The stone they had always called by one familiar name might not actually be what they thought. And in the world of gemstones, discovering a stone's true identity can sometimes reveal an entirely different story hidden beneath the surface.
My father bought that in 1945. During the war, he was in the RAF and he was serving in Ceylon and in Burma. When my mother and him got married, 1947, he gave it to my mother.
Did she wear it?
From the beginning, this ring was already more than just a piece of jewelry. Its story started in 1945, when her father was serving in the RAF in Ceylon and Burma before it later became a wedding gift for his wife in 1947. Over the years, it became part of the family's memories. But the biggest secret was hidden in the yellow stone at the center. For a long time, the family believed it was topaz. It was an easy mistake to make because different gemstones can sometimes share a very similar appearance. But when the expert examined it more closely, the truth was completely different. It was not topaz. It was not citrine. It was actually a golden yellow sapphire. Although sapphires are most commonly associated with their famous blue color, they can naturally appear in many different shades, including yellow. And what made this stone even more interesting was its Ceylon origin. Known today as Sri Lanka, this region has long been famous for producing sapphires sought after by collectors around the world. But the detail that made the ring truly stand out was its size. Around 30 carats. A sapphire of that scale is not only impressive because of its appearance, but also because of the journey behind it. From Ceylon during wartime, to the hands of an RAF serviceman, to a wedding gift, and finally a family treasure passed down through generations. A ring everyone believed was topaz was actually hiding a completely different story.
I think that your father, and indeed your mother, would be pleased to find out that you've got a stone worth £3,000 there. No. Yes.
£3,000. But what makes this moment special is not just the market value, it is the fact that the family finally discovered the truth about something they had treasured for so many years. The ring was already meaningful because of the father who bought it, the mother who wore it, and the memories it carried. But now, it had another layer to its story. It was not just a yellow stone in a family ring. It was a 30-carat Ceylon yellow sapphire with a journey that began decades earlier. And that is what makes antiques so fascinating. Sometimes a treasure is not something lost or forgotten. Sometimes it has been right in front of you the entire time, just waiting for someone to finally reveal what it truly is. You don't often hear a hidden treasure story begin with someone trading away part of a piece of jewelry for a puppy. But that's exactly how the next necklace entered today's countdown. And honestly, that detail alone would make this appraisal memorable.
And I swapped out part of it for a puppy. Puppy? I probably wasn't going to wear to a darling Jack Russell by the name of Max.
It's certainly one of the more unusual beginnings we've heard on Antiques Roadshow. But as entertaining as that story is, the necklace itself turned out to be even more fascinating. The moment the expert saw it, he became visibly excited. not because of the amount of gold it contained and not because of the size of the gemstone. What caught his attention was the design. It immediately reminded him of the work of one of Britain's most influential jewelry designers of the 20th century, Andrew Grima, a man famous for breaking the traditional rules of jewelry design and creating pieces unlike anything else on the market.
Well, when you brought it up to me, I got very excited because it did look like a jeweler that was named Andrew Grima. He was a British jeweler making jewelry in London, and basically he liked to use all of these amazing crystals and geodes.
Grima never viewed jewelry as simple decoration. He viewed it as wearable sculpture. And this necklace perfectly demonstrates that philosophy. Rather than cutting and polishing a gemstone into a conventional shape, he took a natural amethyst geode and split it into two halves to resemble butterfly wings. The result is bold, artistic, and instantly recognizable.
And so he looked at jewelry as sculpture, and he split it in half to resemble the butterfly wings, embellished it with some tiny diamonds on the top and the bottom, and even made the little antenna right here en tremblant, so it trembles when you wear it.
Right.
For years, the necklace spent much of its time tucked away. But collecting trends change, and distinctive designer jewelry from the 1970s has become increasingly desirable. Pieces associated with major names such as Grima have attracted growing attention from collectors and auction buyers alike. By the time the appraisal reached the valuation, it was clear that this unusual butterfly-inspired design was worth far more than anyone might expect from a necklace once connected to a puppy trade.
Auction estimate would be between $3,000 and $5,000.
That's very nice to hear, and also about makes sense.
Not bad at all for a piece that was once exchanged, at least in part, for a Jack Russell named Max. And it's safe to say that few puppies have ever been connected to a necklace quite like this one.
This pin in the shape of a butterfly. I was asked by a friend to go to an estate sale. The estate was from a prominent family in our area. And there were quite a few higher-end, nicer items, and I was able to purchase this at the auction.
At first, this butterfly brooch was simply an interesting piece discovered at an estate sale. But in the world of antique jewelry, even the smallest designs can sometimes hold far more detail than their appearance suggests. Nature-inspired motifs such as flowers, birds, and insects became extremely popular during the Victorian period, when jewelers transformed elements of the natural world into miniature works of art. And with this butterfly pin, the first thing that caught the experts' attention was the stones forming its wings.
I've always wanted to start an appraisal with the two words, biogenic silica. That's opal, silica from the oceans over millions of years, plankton, algae, diatoms. It compresses, and that's basically what opal is.
Opal is different from many other gemstones because of a special visual effect known as play of color. As light moves through its internal structure, high-quality opals can produce constantly changing flashes of color, making the surface of the stone appear almost alive. And the vibrant colors on this brooch revealed another important clue about its origin.
But this type of opal, where you see all this fire and these flashes, most likely came from an area in Australia called Lightning Ridge. There's these huge deposits of this opal that they still mine to this day.
But the brooch was not special because of opal alone. During the Victorian era, butterfly and insect designs often appeared in jewelry because they represented beauty, transformation, and the energy of the natural world. High-quality Victorian pieces also combined different gemstones and detailed craftsmanship to create more elaborate designs. And after a closer inspection, the expert discovered even more details, adding to its value.
You have an old European cut diamond. It's approximately 1/5 of a carat. I'm going to go with, at auction, $3,000 to $5,000 today.
Great. Wonderful. Excellent.
The combination of opal, ruby, diamond, and traditional craftsmanship showed that this was far more than a simple decorative pin. From an estate sale purchase, the butterfly brooch turned out to be a Victorian piece over a century old. A small design that preserved the beauty of natural gemstones, artistic style, and the jewelry-making skills of a past era. Case 211845, Victorian Serpent, bracelet with diamonds. This next case begins with a ring that many people might judge only by looking at the diamonds. How large are the stones? Would it be worth more if they were removed and turned into something modern? But in antique jewelry, sometimes the greatest value is not found by changing a piece. It is found in everything the piece has managed to keep. Because this ring does not only carry diamonds, it carries a family story, a connection to the past, and a small piece of the Victorian era that survived for more than a century.
The ring belonged to my great-grandmother.
Who happens to be this lady here?
That's that lady there, yes.
In her court dress, perhaps, with fine lace and pearls, and that signals a pretty elevated status, doesn't it?
She was married to a guy called Clement Smith, and he was Queen Victoria's vicar.
Those few details immediately changed the story behind this ring. It was no longer just an old piece of jewelry. It belonged to a real person with a family history and a connection to the world of Queen Victoria through Clement Smith. But its value was not because it was a royal artifact. What fascinated the expert was how much of its original identity had survived. This is a Victorian 5-stone diamond ring, a 19th century style where multiple diamonds work together instead of relying on one large center stone. Over time, many antique rings have been altered. The stones are removed, recut, or placed into modern settings because people believe that will make them more valuable. But once that happens, something impossible to replace disappears: the original history. This ring was special because it still kept the setting, craftsmanship, and feeling of the period when it was created. Collectors are not only looking for diamonds. They are looking for pieces that still carry their original story. That is why the expert did not see this as a ring that should be taken apart. He saw it as a piece of the 19th century that had survived almost exactly as it was meant to be.
And this would be a complete travesty because this is a mid-19th century ring looking absolutely wonderful as it is. And I don't think anybody would dream much of doing that. So very pretty, original condition, enviable, marketable. So £3,000 to £5,000.
£3,000 to £5,000. But the real lesson was not only about the price. The value came from the fact that the ring remained unchanged after more than 150 years. If someone removed the diamonds, the stones would still exist. But the story around them would disappear. And that is what makes this Victorian 5-stone diamond ring special. Sometimes in antiques, the most valuable thing is not making something look newer. It is protecting the history that is already there.
I received it as part of an inheritance from an aunt who was the wife of a partner of Andrew Carnegie in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was a very elegant person. I was drawn to it because it has so many different elements of it.
At first glance, this looked like a beautiful family heirloom that had been carefully preserved over the years. But after just a few minutes of examination, the expert began noticing details that revealed the story behind this brooch was far more special than the owner had ever imagined.
Underneath these gold rings, I was able to make out, first, made in France, and you know what? I got a great name, Van Cleef and Arpels.
Just one name was enough to completely change the significance of the piece. In the world of antique jewelry, the maker behind a creation can be one of the most important factors. Legendary houses are collected not only for valuable materials, but also for their history, craftsmanship, and instantly recognizable design style.
Van Cleef and Arpels made this probably in the late 20s, and it was a dress clip, which you would just clip on. So what someone did was actually took a very ordinary yellow gold circle brooch and took it to a jeweler, and they just stuck it on. Today, what we would do is take it off, try to put it back as a dress clip.
But the biggest twist came from the piece's current form. A small modification made in the past had changed it from the original design. For collectors, originality is extremely important because even adjustments made to make jewelry easier to wear can affect its historical value.
I would say if you had to go to public auction, we'd estimate it $5,000 to $7,000. If it was intact, probably $10,000 to $15,000.
The final valuation showed the lasting appeal of pieces created by prestigious jewelry houses. Even after being altered, the craftsmanship, design, and origin of this brooch were still enough to make it highly desirable among collectors. What was once seen simply as a family keepsake turned out to carry the name of a world-famous jewelry maker. And the next piece in today's countdown continues with a gemstone where just one detail about its origin could completely transform its value. And at first glance, this ring could look like just another antique sapphire ring. But in the world of antique jewelry, sometimes the greatest value is hidden in the smallest details. A tiny carving, a small mark, a name hidden within the piece. And with this ring, everything started with a final gift left behind by a close friend.
It was left to me from a very dear friend who I'd known for many years, and he passed quite recently. I'd not seen him for nearly 2 years though, and I just got a letter out of the blue saying that I'd been left a load of his things.
At first, this ring did not enter the story as an expensive collector's item. It was a memory from a friend who had passed away, someone who loved art and objects with deeper stories behind them. But when the experts started looking closer, the ring slowly revealed a completely different level of value. The blue stone at the center was not just a sapphire, it was a sapphire intaglio. Instead of adding an image onto the surface, the intaglio technique requires an artist to carve directly into the stone, creating a miniature work of art inside an extremely hard material. And the figure carved into this sapphire was Julius Caesar, one of the most famous names from ancient Rome. But the detail that truly changed everything was not only the carving, it was the maker behind it. A small mark showing 2 letter C's facing away from each other connected the ring to Castellani, one of the most important jewelry ateliers in 19th century Rome. Castellani became famous for reviving inspiration from ancient Greece and Rome, creating pieces that were not only decorative but also carried history and artistic meaning. That gave this small ring several layers of value. It was a sapphire. It was an intaglio artwork. It carried the image of Julius Caesar. And most importantly, it carried the mark of a jeweler recognized by collectors. Something that first looked like a simple ring was actually holding a story that stretched across centuries.
Because it's not worth £1,000, it's worth £5,000.
Oh my God.
£5,000? But that number was only one part of what made this ring special. For collectors, the value came from Castellani, the intaglio technique, and the connection to ancient-inspired art. But for the owner, it was still a final gift from an important friend. That is what makes antique jewelry different. One object can preserve hundreds of years of history while still holding a deeply personal human story. This ring did not capture attention because of its size. It captured attention because of what was hidden inside it, an ancient symbol, the mark of an important artist, and the memory of the person who chose to leave it behind. The next case begins with a ring so small that many people could easily overlook it. There is no large diamond, no brightly colored gemstone, and no extravagant appearance that would immediately make someone think it was an extremely valuable piece. But in the world of antiques, sometimes the smallest objects hold the biggest stories. And with this ring, the secret was not hidden in its size. It was hidden in a name found inside.
And tell me, who gave it to you?
Old gentleman who lived next door. We made a lot of things.
He was on his own, left on his own, and we looked after him and so on. He was 94 years old.
And did he know about whatever?
I don't really know.
This was not a piece purchased from a major auction or passed down through a wealthy family. It was simply a gift from an elderly neighbor who'd been cared for by the couple. And perhaps even they did not realize just how special this little ring truly was. Everything changed when they discovered the name Lalique. René Lalique was not just a jewelry maker. He was one of the most important artists of the Art Nouveau movement, someone who helped change the way the world looked at jewelry. For Lalique, value did not only come from large diamonds or expensive gemstones, jewelry could become a miniature work of art. And this ring represents exactly that idea. The special detail is the pliqué à jour enamel technique. Unlike ordinary enamel, this method creates almost transparent layers of enamel, allowing light to pass through like a tiny stained glass window. In Lalique's hands, it became a way to capture nature, color, and movement. Every small detail was not simply made for decoration. It was designed to transform the ring into something that felt alive. That is why collectors do not see it as just a small piece of jewelry. They see the Lalique signature, the difficult craftsmanship, the Art Nouveau style, and the mark of a great artist. A ring can be small in size, but the story and value behind it can be something much bigger.
People collect these things, and if it turned up in a sale, two collectors wanting it very badly, I think maybe 5,000, maybe 6,000 wouldn't be completely mad.
5,000 to 6,000 pounds for one small ring. A number that might seem surprising if someone only looked at its appearance. But collectors are not just paying for the materials. They are searching for the Lalique name, the craftsmanship, and a piece of Art Nouveau history. What makes this even more special is that the ring may have once been kept by someone who never fully knew its true value. But it was still preserved, passed on, and eventually recognized for what it really was. It did not need a giant gemstone or a dramatic design. Just one small signature inside was enough to reveal the entire story. Because sometimes in the world of antiques, the greatest treasures do not need to stand out immediately. They only need to wait for the right person to look closely enough and discover what has been hidden all along.
Blue sky, huge crowd, great jewellery.
One's a pendant, which I have here, and one is this rather dark, slightly sombre looking box. Tell me a bit about where they came from.
Well, I inherited them from my grandma.
With many antiques, the smallest details surrounding an object can sometimes be just as important as the piece itself. An old box, a tiny inscription, or a detail that seems ordinary can become the clue that helps experts uncover the true story behind an item.
However, when we look inside the lid of the box, we see that it has the name VEVER. Now, VEVER were a French company based in Paris.
And just one name completely changed the story. In the world of antique jewelry, the maker behind a piece can have a huge influence on its value. Historic jewelry houses attract collectors not only because of the materials they used, but also because of their distinctive style, craftsmanship, and artistic legacy.
Now, the flower itself looks a little bit like a convolvulus flower, which we know as bindweed, actually. This particular flower is morning glory.
The details of the brooch continue to support the story suggested by the box. Art Nouveau jewelry is known for taking inspiration from the natural world, using flowing shapes and organic designs to transform small pieces of jewelry into miniature works of art.
I think that would probably be worth something like £5,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Well, could even make 6 or 7.
The final valuation showed why provenance matters so much in the antique market. Two pieces may contain similar materials, but an item connected to a respected jewelry maker can hold a completely different level of appeal for collectors.
But you would agree, it's a very, very attractive piece. £6,000.
Wow.
The biggest surprise was that a small detail preserved over time helped reveal the story behind the entire brooch. That is what makes discoveries like this so fascinating. On Antiques Roadshow, value is not always hidden only in the object itself. Sometimes the overlooked details around it become the key to seeing a piece in an entirely new way. And the next item in today's countdown continues with another surprising discovery, where one small detail leads experts to one of the most famous jewelry names in the world.
Shall I tell you what I think it is? I think it's a snowflake.
Oh, right, okay.
I think it's a snowflake brooch pendant.
From the very first look, the expert immediately recognized the special idea behind this piece of jewelry. This was not simply a decorative design, but a snowflake created from a combination of different gemstones. The diamonds created flashes of light, while the colorful stones gave the piece a brilliant effect, almost like a snowflake reflecting sunlight.
But all the gems are different, mixtures of semi-precious and precious gems in a snowflake cluster surround. So it's a full range of colourful late Victorian gems in a frame of diamonds, and the middle stone is a peridot.
What made the brooch so interesting was the combination of colors. Instead of focusing on one large gemstone, the jeweler used a variety of different stones to create balance throughout the entire design. That creativity is part of what allowed the piece to remain attractive more than a century later.
Because I think, looking at the stones at the front, that this is late Victorian. That is usually Georgian, but I don't think this is a Georgian brooch at all. I think this was made in about 1895.
The details of the brooch revealed more about its true quality and history. Created around 1895 during the late Victorian period, the piece represented a moment of transition in jewelry design, combining older techniques with the changing styles of the era.
I think if it was being offered in a retail shop, it would probably sell today for £6,000 to £6,500. That's my feeling about it.
The final valuation of around £6,000 to £6,500 showed the lasting appeal of a well-preserved Victorian jewel after approximately 125 years. It may not be the most expensive piece in the countdown, but it stands out because of its creative concept, craftsmanship, and unique beauty.
Now, don't take this the wrong way. We do not get very many young men coming in with formal brooches like this.
No.
So there's a puzzle for me. What made you bring this in?
It's really intrigued, you know. It's a really nice brooch, hope it's real. And I thought I'd just find a bit more about it. You know, what is it, Art Deco, Art Nouveau, that period?
Yes.
Right from the beginning, this brooch created a slightly unusual moment on Antiques Roadshow. Not because of a complicated family history or a mysterious origin, but because a piece of jewelry that seemed familiar was about to reveal details far beyond what the owner expected.
So, it's not Art Nouveau, it's Art Deco.
Great.
Yes, you're right. Yes. How do I know it's Art Deco? Because it's this geometric, linear form, where in the Nouveau period it would be all flowing lines and soft flowers and that sort of thing.
By looking at the design style, the expert recognized the influence of one of the most celebrated periods in jewelry history. High-quality Art Deco pieces remain popular with collectors because they combine bold structure, precise craftsmanship, and a timeless appearance that still feels modern almost a century later.
Now, it's a white metal frame, and it's mounted in the center with a green stone. What's the green stone?
It's an emerald.
It's an emerald,
right.
But it's quite a nice emerald. Colombian.
This was the detail that elevated the brooch even further. In the gemstone world, origin can play a major role in value, and exceptional emeralds are always highly desirable. Combined with a well-preserved period design, the piece became far more interesting to collectors.
If I said it was worth a couple of £1,000, oh my goodness me, thank you very much indeed.
No, I'll be well impressed with that.
Okay, £6,000 to £8,000.
Oh!
The final valuation reflected the combination of age, craftsmanship, gemstone quality, and condition. It was no longer just a family piece, but a collectible Art Deco jewel with genuine market appeal. And the owner's reaction captured exactly why these discoveries are so memorable. Sometimes a familiar object kept within a family can hold far more value than anyone ever imagined. The next case begins with a ring that even its owner did not fully understand. And finally, just a few small gemstones can completely change the entire story.
Well, it came to me through my godmother's daughter, who's now 93. And she and my mother were best of friends. She had no children, and this was her second husband's, first wife's, mother's jewelry.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
Just like the experts said, this was not an easy journey to follow. The ring was not simply passed from mother to daughter across generations. Instead, it traveled through a much more complicated path before finally reaching the guest. At first, it may have looked like a beautiful ruby and diamond ring, but after taking a closer look, the experts started noticing the details that made it different. The ring combined ruby, diamond, platinum, and 18-karat gold with a design far more powerful than an ordinary piece of jewelry. But the precious materials were only the first layer. The bigger discovery came when the ring was identified as a creation by David Webb. For collectors, that name immediately moved the piece into another category. David Webb became known for bold 20th century designs, using colorful gemstones, sculptural gold, and a distinctive style that was instantly recognizable. When a ring carries the signature of a designer, it is no longer valued only by the weight of the gold or the stones inside. It becomes signed jewelry where buyers are also searching for the design, the name, and the creative identity behind the piece. But the most important layer was still hidden in the rubies. In the world of gemstones, origin and treatment can dramatically change value. Burmese rubies have long been highly desired by collectors, especially when they remain in their natural state without heat treatment. So if these stones could be certified as Burmese unheated rubies, this would no longer be just a beautiful David Webb ring. It would become a combination of a famous designer, high-quality materials, and gemstones with a truly special origin.
That certification and being labeled Burmese rubies that are unheated in a David Webb ring from the late 50s and the 1960s. This type of an item at auction would have an estimate of $8,000 to $12,000.
Really?
Yes.
That surprised reaction is easy to understand. In just a few minutes, a family ring with a complicated history had its value uncovered layer by layer. The object itself never changed. But the way the expert understood it changed everything. From a ruby and diamond ring, it became a piece of David Webb signed jewelry. And with the possibility of Burmese unheated rubies, the story reached another level. That is what makes antique jewelry so fascinating. The true value is not always visible at first glance. It comes from the questions waiting to be answered. Who created it, what period it came from, and how special the stones inside really are. When all of those elements come together, an ordinary family piece can become a hidden treasure that even the owner never expected. 1945, Robert Rauschenberg oil portrait. Long before Robert Rauschenberg became a giant of modern American art, he painted a simple portrait of a fellow serviceman, and that quiet moment would one day become far more important than anyone expected. But what made this piece special was not the person in the portrait, it was the person who created it.
I brought a portrait of my father by Robert Rauschenberg. My father was in the service in 1945. I became friends with Robert Rauschenberg.
The detail that changed the entire story was the moment when the painting was created. In 1945, Robert Rauschenberg had not yet become a famous name in modern American art. This was an extremely early period, when he was only beginning to explore his creative path. And that was exactly what made an ordinary family portrait become much more interesting. But for many years, the family saw it in a completely different way.
Yeah, we did. Actually, we always had two pictures on the wall, and the one was probably a $2 picture, and then this was this one, and being lime green and everything, you'd always assume the one on the right was always the more expensive one, but my dad says, no, this is signed by Robert Rauschenberg.
This is what creates some of the most surprising moments on Antiques Roadshow. A valuable object is not always lost or hidden away. Sometimes it has been there the entire time, but the true story behind it has never been discovered. But with a major artist like Rauschenberg, a signature alone is not enough. The next important step is proving the history of the artwork.
And I think these are great because they actually show, this one right here shows your father sitting while in the Navy with Robert Rauschenberg.
Yes, exactly.
The additional evidence helped directly connect the painting to the artist. In the art market, provenance can make an enormous difference, especially with works from a rare period of a famous artist's career. And when all these details came together, the true value of the portrait was finally revealed.
I would put a conservative auction estimate of $40,000 to $60,000 on it.
Holy cow, are you kidding me? I guess it was worth more than that $2 picture right next to it. Oh, amazing.
Its greatest value was not only found in the famous signature, but also in the story of an ordinary moment preserved before a young serviceman became an art legend.
Around 10 years old, my father bought it in 1953 for me. And I've had that ever since. It's what I learned how to play.
A guitar bought by a father for his 10-year-old son. At first, it sounds like a simple family gift, a first instrument, early lessons, wrong notes, practice sessions, and then, slowly, something that becomes part of a person's life. But this was not an ordinary student guitar. It was a 1953 John D'Angelico Exel archtop guitar. And the name D'Angelico immediately pulls this story out of the world of everyday family instruments and into the world of handmade New York archtop jazz guitars. Unlike many Fender or Gibson discoveries, where value often comes from the model, finish, pickups, or production rarity, this guitar is special because it carries the hand of a specific maker. John D'Angelico did not build guitars like a mass production factory. Each of his archtops feels like it was made for a real player, with particular choices in the neck, finish, sound, and final details. That is what made the appraiser look closer. The year 1953 sits right in the heart of D'Angelico's best period. when his craftsmanship, reputation, and the needs of jazz guitarists all came together. And excel from this moment was not just an old instrument, it was a piece of American jazz guitar history. But the strongest detail was the provenance. The family still had the original sales receipt, written by John D'Angelico himself, showing that the guest's father bought the guitar on the 19th of October 1953 for $325. That piece of paper made the story far more solid. This guitar was not merely probably a D'Angelico. It was bought at the right time, from the right maker, and then kept in the same family for decades. And it did not live as a display piece. The guest learned on it, earned money playing music at a young age, and later performed with several bands. The playing wear, the damaged pickguard, and the missing pickup did not weaken the story. They proved the guitar had actually lived. A 1953 D'Angelico Excel with the original receipt, family provenance, a custom dark finish, a medium neck, and the marks of a real musical life. What began as a $325 gift was about to be seen in a completely different way.
This one was made in 1953. Really, that's right in the middle of his best period. Your initial $325 investment today at a vintage guitar shop would sell in the range of $30,000 to $35,000 at retail.
Jade is one of the few gemstones that can make even an experienced appraiser proceed with caution. A small crack, a slight difference in color, or a change in surface quality can dramatically affect its value. So when this jade collection arrived at Antique Roadshow, the first task wasn't assigning a price. It was understanding exactly what time had done to each piece.
My grandfather bought them for my grandmother over the years, and I think he must have bought them in London.
It's very tricky with jade. Issues with jade you have to bear in mind are colour, uniformity of colour through the stone, shape of the stone, size of course, patina.
The appraiser was intrigued almost immediately. There was a jade ring mounted with diamonds in a style typical of the 1920s. There was also an Art Deco brooch combining jade and diamonds. But jade always comes with challenges. One piece had an unusual shape. Another had a crack running directly through the stone. And with jade, flaws like that matter.
It's got a crack running all the way through it.
In fact, the mount's been made to hold it because it's got more claws on that side.
And they're very thin slices, aren't they?
Yeah.
Then came the piece that truly stopped the appraiser in his tracks. A Chinese jade carving with extraordinary detail. Tiny birds, intricate open-work carving, and a rich color that immediately stood out from the rest of the collection.
And then finally, you've got this terrific, terrific Chinese jade carving, which, by its quality, I mean, look at the detail here, the little bird.
Then the valuations began.
I think that in that condition, with the crack across it, my instinct is that this is probably worth something around £4,000. That one there, I think it has to be worth the same sort of money. Fetch something like £6,000 to £8,000.
Really?
But I think this is probably £8,000 or £10,000.
Several pieces were valued at around £4,000. The finest carving could bring between £8,000 and £10,000. But the most memorable part of this story wasn't the money. It was the fact that the owner's grandfather spent years collecting these pieces for the woman he loved. And decades later, that affection still seems to live on in every piece of jade passed down to the next generation.
I brought in this pin. It was in my father's safe deposit box, and we had to open it when he passed. We actually someone had to drill it open, and we found a bunch of jewelry that I had never seen before. And this is one of the things it found.
After years hidden away, this brooch finally made its way out of the safe and onto the appraisal table. At first glance, the expert could already see signs of a high-quality Art Deco piece. But the most exciting detail was not only the design or the diamonds surrounding it.
Your wife is correct. It is a sapphire. That color suggests that it's a sapphire from the cashmere origin.
That possibility immediately changed the story. In the world of fine gemstones, origin can make an enormous difference. Certain locations are highly prized by collectors because of their rarity, history, and the unique qualities associated with the stones they produced.
We can't know for sure without a laboratory report, so they can tell you with some certainty where they're from. When you see the light hit that stone and you see that prized velvet blue, you kind of know it's probably going to be from Kashmir.
This is why professional testing is so important for exceptional gemstones. An expert's experience can reveal important clues, but only a detailed report can confirm the full story. Sometimes that single confirmation can completely transform how a piece is viewed on the market.
If we get that lab report, and it is a Kashmir sapphire, and it is about a carat, I would have no problem estimating this for auction in the $15,000 to $20,000 range.
Oh my goodness. I guess we're going to have to reopen the estate. I'm going to have to divide this 3 ways.
The final estimate proved this was already an impressive discovery. But what made the appraisal even more exciting was the possibility that there was still another level of value waiting to be confirmed. One small detail about a gemstone's origin could turn a beautiful brooch into something far more extraordinary. And that is what makes antique jewelry so fascinating. Sometimes the biggest secret is the one that cannot be seen at first glance.
It belongs to my mother. Yes. She was left it in a will about 55 years ago.
Yes.
And she wore it as a young lady.
Yes.
Went dancing in it, and it fell off. So that's why it's been left in this box in the safe.
For many years, this serpent bracelet was kept away and rarely appeared again. But behind its impressive design was a story that went far beyond an ordinary piece of gold and diamond jewelry. During the Victorian era, images used in jewelry were often chosen with a purpose. Each symbol could represent love, memory, or personal messages that the owner wanted to preserve. And the serpent shape on this bracelet was the first important clue.
Yes, the snake biting its tail is a very ancient emblem of eternity. It's called the Ouroboros, the eternally renewing circle. And the fact it's gold that's incorruptible, and these are all metaphors for love.
During the Victorian period, jewelry was not only a display of wealth or social status. Every shape, color, and material could carry its own meaning. The serpent became one of the most famous symbols of this era, especially after serpent jewelry became popular among the European upper class. But after a closer inspection, the expert discovered this bracelet was not simply a piece representing connection. Hidden behind the beauty of gold and diamonds was another layer of meaning, something much deeper and more emotional.
But it's more than that, actually. It's probably a very sophisticated piece of mourning jewelry. So, mourning is love beyond the grave.
Mourning jewelry was created to preserve memories of loved ones who had passed away. Rather than just decoration, these pieces became personal keepsakes, combining craftsmanship with the stories of the people who owned them. And on this bracelet, a small hidden detail on the back revealed its true meaning.
And so, I think it's worth £8,000 to £10,000.
Really? As much as that? Ooh, goodness.
The hidden details transform this bracelet from a beautiful piece of jewelry into an object preserving memories from nearly 2 centuries ago. Together with its flexible design, well-preserved enamel, and diamond-decorated serpent head, the piece showed the exceptional craftsmanship of the Victorian era. A bracelet that spent years locked away in a safe ultimately revealed a story of love, loss, and the jewelry-making skill of a time long past. Few items in Antique Roadshow history can be recognized instantly. This is one of them. So when the FA Cup appeared in front of the expert, his reaction was one of genuine disbelief.
It's a real pleasure to meet you. I'm really rather stunned and shocked with what you brought along. Now, why would you have fruiting vines embossed on a football trophy? You would normally expect to see a football stuck on top.
Somewhere.
Yeah. And there's nothing on this to indicate that it was made specially as a football trophy. Now, I might be banned from every football ground in the country for saying this, but I suspect this might have been an off-the-shelf piece.
Oddly enough, England's most famous football trophy doesn't really look like a football trophy at all. With its grape clusters and winding vines, it looks more like something designed for wine than for sport. And the story behind it is even more remarkable. After the original FA Cup was stolen, this replacement version was created in 1911 and went on to become a familiar sight for generations of football fans.
Is it possible to put a value on something like this, with all that history that you've just described?
I was just going to say, the hardest thing of all about this is trying to put a value on it. This is probably, along with maybe the Wimbledon trophy, the most famous cup in the country.
That led to the biggest question of all. How do you put a price on a national sporting icon?
I think quite comfortably this has got to be worth well over £1 million. The highest value piece of silver I've ever valued on the Antiques Roadshow.
Wow.
Not only was it valued at more than £1 million, it was also the most valuable piece of silver this expert had ever appraised in the history of Antique Roadshow.